And of course, today is the annual Armed Forces Day. It's a festival really that's been taking place the last couple of days, and it's been a hive of activity if you've been down in Cape Town and if you've looked up into the skies. It's been incredible. Wherever you look, it's a celebration of the armed forces that we have here in South Africa. Of course, today is also the commemoration of the sinking of the SABC. This happened back in 1917 in the English Channel, and of course we saw the 600 South African Native Labour Corps members and 33 crew members lose their lives. So that is of course the real reason behind why it is now particularly Armed Forces Day, but it's also an opportunity for our South African armed forces to show off what they have, and the public gets involved in seeing it all. But it is a great pleasure to have with us here our Minister, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, in charge of defence and military veterans. Great to have you. A windy but beautiful scene we've got.
Very windy, beautiful day though.
Yeah. You know, I was reminding viewers as to why it is Armed Forces Day, and you know, it's a sad day for the history of South Africa, isn't it?
Well, it is a sad day, but I think it's also one of our days to be celebrated. That even though you had those number of men who died on the English Channel when that ship went down, but we used that day, which is the 21st of February, as our Armed Forces Day. And this is a day to celebrate the victories of a democracy in South Africa. I really believe that today is one day when South Africans should rally behind the South African National Defence Force. This is one day where we should celebrate. If you want to see a symbol of unity and reconciliation, nation building in South Africa, come into the South African National Defence Force, because this is where we brought together both statutory and statutory forces and formed one entity, which is the South African National Defence Force. So for me, the celebration of our nation building, which is one of our major achievements, I think, as a country, a celebration. Remember, this is the 25 years anniversary, 25th anniversary of the formation of the South African National Defence Force. So we have a lot to celebrate, and for me, nation building is key.
So we've been seeing displays happening all over the area. This doesn't just last for one day. If it's basically goes on for the week. What's the point of displaying what we do have in our armed forces?
Before we even talk about that, I think I owe it to South Africans to thank the people of the Western Cape. Throughout this week, in all the events we have had, we've seen numbers, hundreds and hundreds of people who came out to support the South African National Defence Force. 2 days ago, we had a night shooting exercise in Muizenberg, and I've never seen so many people at night at the beach coming in to see what the South African National Defence Force is capable of. And that for me is not so much that they were inquisitive, but also to do with our people uniting in action in support of what our democracy has brought to us.
Fantastic. I mean, you were telling me that you were asking the guys, we need a second night. There are so many people here that wanted to come in.
Yes, because the first day for the rehearsal, it was equally full. Second day, the actual day of night shooting, it was full. And I was thinking maybe we have given them 3 days, but I'm sure you would still have the same people coming forward to watch what's happening. But what is, for me, was very striking is that you saw families, you know, elderly people, young people, babies coming out, brought out as you know, as families to come and observe this. It was beautiful. It's been a beautiful week for the South African National Defence Force. And if I think that the Defence Force itself does not appreciate that, well, I don't know what they want. I think there couldn't have been more support displayed than what we have seen this week.
Some people obviously do criticize it, and some go as far as saying it really is a vanity display of the South African military might. What's your response to critics?
It can only be people who have no appreciation of where South Africa comes from. We come from the past. We come from a past where the military was used against the citizens of this country. We come from that past where the military in South Africa crossed the borders into other countries to go and attack citizens of the country in search, of course, of your freedom fighters. Now, if you don't appreciate what the Defence Force of that time and what the Defence Force of today is doing, which is that of being involved in peacekeeping, for instance, in areas where there is trouble. If you don't appreciate that, and if you think that today it's just a waste of money, people are just militarizing our streets and so on, and not appreciate that, it's important for South Africans to see, one, where your tax goes to, why you are supporting them, to allow for the Defence Force to talk about what they are doing every day and what capabilities we have as a country to defend the sovereignty of the Republic of South Africa. For instance, you will know that every year this event is hosted by a different province. We rotate, provinces. Today we are here. And for me, what it says is that if anything were to happen, and if enemy came from the coast here in the Western Cape, which is in the southern tip of the continent, we would be able to defend the Republic. So I think that people who are cynical. People are never happy. But what is important is that South Africans must rally behind the South African National Defence Force. These are people who have vowed to lay their lives on the line for their country.
Minister, just a final question to you. I know that the events here get off around about 10, 11 o'clock this morning. The President will be here. He was here last year as well, and it's a very big highlight on the President's calendar. What are you expecting him to address and say this morning?
Well, the President of the Republic of South Africa is the Commander-in-Chief of the South African National Defence Force and all forces, security organs in South Africa. I would expect him to talk about the importance of the nation rallying behind the South African National Defence Force. I would expect him to talk about issues of peace, that where there is no peace and stability, there can never be prosperity, there can never be development. So it's important that we play the role which we are currently playing, we should continue to do so, of being peace brokers and therefore peacekeepers in countries where there is conflict. I expect that the President will also motivate the young men and women in South Africa, in the South African National Defence Force, and actually congratulate and commend the current crop of leadership in the South African National Defence Force. Remember, some of the generals who are there are now the generals who came into the SANDF very young, but who appreciated that you needed to move beyond where you came from. You needed to come together and form the South African National Defence Force and swear your allegiance to the flag and the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. So some of the people you are seeing who are now transiting, who are exiting the South African National Defence Force because they are retiring, it's the leadership that's responsible for actually building this defence force. And sometimes I'm very sad about it, because I wish that the group which is coming up, the younger group, the generation which is coming up, your middle layer, should continue to have that appreciation that it was not easy for us to be where we are today, and that people should guard this country jealously, that people should continue to defend the gains of the people of South Africa, the gains of our revolution, of achieving one South African National Defence Force.
Minister, thank you very much for talking to us. Have a wonderful day today. Thanks for your time. That was, of course, our Minister of Defence and Military Veterans, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. Such a windy yet beautiful day here in Bloubergstrand. Minister, you can actually go out that way. I know you have to get to a meeting. The Minister is off to UCT and she has to go there and then get back here as well. So we thank her very, very much for her time. All right, we're going to go back to the Johannesburg studio. You may have Samsungs and phones there, Sakina, but you know what? Look what I got. I mean, this is priceless. Just having a look at the view from Bloubergstrand. It's always the best view when it comes to having a look at exactly the majestic Table Mountain and Cape Town nestled below it. This is magnificent. I know you got some headlines for us. What's